Hi guys, it's Shanae and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm continuing my read-along for ErHa Volume 3. We are on read-along 29 if my info is correct. So yeah, I'm vaguely terrified. I don't have mascara on. Wow, I almost went like Afrikaans there. I don't have mascara on. I did wear some earlier today, so there might still be some on there. That might come back to bite me if we end up having some more torturous scenes slash chapters. We shall have to wait and see. But yeah, sorry I'm late. I sat down, I was ready to press stream on the dot, and then I realized I'm not sure if my battery is full, so I just needed to double check that. But we're good now, I think. Hope the audio is okay. I seem to be glitching a little bit, so that's not good. Let's hope it doesn't affect the stream too much. Hi! But yeah, also just again, let me know if the audio is okay. Hi! And we're gonna wait like 2 more minutes just in case. And I think that's more or less it. I have my tea and my water here with me for when I need to take a break. Thank you. And we're gonna take the scheduled break on the hour unless the chapter wraps up a little bit early, in which case we might take it a few minutes earlier, but it should be more or less fine. And I think that's more or less it. I hope. And also I'm gonna try and do some more pages today than we did during Tuesday's stream, but that will honestly just depend on how much crying I do throughout this live stream, so no promises. I'm so sleepy, slept for 2 hours a day last 4 days, but hopefully won't fall asleep. No. Oh goodness, good luck. But also if you need to sleep, the replay is gonna be here for you. Stay safe, stay healthy, please, if you can. But yeah, full sympathies, because I have also not been sleeping too well. My book has been keeping me up at night, weirdly enough. Okay, while we wait 1 more minute, let me quickly tell you guys, for anyone who wants to follow along with their own novels, we are on the top, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, at the top of 144. We ended with Wake Up, Turn Back, Turn Back. Is the stream constantly cutting out for anybody else, or is it just at my end? Oh, that's not good. Hi! Yeah, I think it seems more stable now, and also from my side it seems that the connection should be fine. So if you are having issues, maybe just refresh the stream. That does sometimes help. Okay. Are we ready? So I'm just gonna reread this one sentence and then we shall go from there. Okay. Do you truly hate me so much that you wouldn't grant me a moment of peace, even at the very end? Moran, Moran, don't do this anymore. Wake up, turn back, turn back. Wake up. Turning toward Moran to wake up, but he himself, his own hollow eyes wide open, sank into an endless slumber. Also, sorry, can we just take a moment to address the fact that we aren't even halfway through this volume and we already had the moments on the cover? I thought we were gonna end on this. But no, they just shot us in the heart not even halfway through. It's honestly rude. Okay, sorry, I just had to take a moment because it was only after I'd finished with the stream and closed the book that I realized what I was seeing on the cover. Moran didn't believe, he refused to believe, that Chuaning could just die like this. With the great Zongshi of an era, that high and lofty man, his Shizun, the person he despised more than anyone, could die just like this, lying in his arms at the edge of the heavenly lake, dyed red with blood, growing cold bit by bit, cold as frost, frozen like ice. Chuaning's face was awash in blood. Moran stared for a time with his head bowed, then raised his sleeve to wipe it clean. But there was too much blood. The more he wiped, the more dirtied that once clear, clean face. The more he dirtied that once clear, clean face. Moran pressed his lips together and wiped harder. All he got in return was a face smeared with gore. Chuaning's features nearly unrecognizable. At last, he stopped laughing. Closing his eyes, he murmured quietly, "You won this time, Chuaning. I couldn't stop you from dying." He paused, then opened his eyes again. They were deep and dark, yet within that abyss, a fire burned. "But you've underestimated me too," he continued. "I can't stop you if you don't wish to live, but neither can you stop me if I don't wish you to die." Moran brought Chuaning back to Shizun Peak. He said not a word about his death. But when he was already immensely powerful, more than capable of staving off decay from a dead body indefinitely, thus he kept Chuaning's body at the Red Lotus Pavilion and forced him to live on in this manner. He simply couldn't accept that he had killed the last person in the world who cared about him. So long as he could keep Chuaning's body from turning to ash, so long as he could still look at him every day, he could go on believing that Chuaning wasn't dead. Damn, okay. Let's see here. Hi! Welcome, I hope you enjoyed here. Oh goodness. There would still be a place for him to unload his deranged hatred, a place for him to entrust his twisted love. Ta Xianjin had finally gone completely insane. After Chuaning departed, Moran would visit the Red Lotus Pavilion every day, without exception, to look upon his corpse. At first, his eyes would flash with malice, and he would spit and curse before the body, saying, "Chuaning, this is what you deserve. You cared for every person under the sun but me, you hypocrite. What kind of master are you? You must have been blind back then to take you... I must have been blind back then to take you as my master, you bastard." Later, he would ask relentlessly, every day, "Why are you still asleep? When are you going to wake up? I've already let Shuming go. Is that not enough for you? Get up already." Whenever he said such things, the servants accompanying him would wonder if he truly cracked and gone mad. His wife, Song Chutong, wondered the same. The prospect frightened her, and consequently, as she lay beside Moran after a rare night of intimacy, she seized the chance to ask, "Alan, the dent won't come back. I know you're sad, but..." "Who's sad?" Yeah, don't go telling him what he's feeling because he's not aware of what he's feeling. Song Chitong paused. She was adept at reading faces, even more so after the years that she'd spent as Moran's side. At Moran's side, why am I struggling so much? Her every step was careful, like treading on thin ice. When she saw his ill temper, she fell silent at once and lowered her eyes, saying, "This one misspoke." But this time, Moran didn't let her off so easily. "No, no," he pressed, narrowing his eyes. "You've already spit it out. So let's have it. Go on, tell me, who's sad? Your Majesty. Moran's dark eyes rolled with thunder. He abruptly sat up and seized Song Chitong by her delicate neck. With one hand, he lifted the woman he had just laid with and threw her off the bed. His face had twisted into something dangerous and bestial. What do you mean the dead won't come back? Who's dead? Who's not coming back? Moran pushed each word past Grit's teeth, aggressive and empathetic. Empathic? Oh, sorry. No one's dead. No one needs to come back. And no one is sad. Song Chitong's lips quivered. She wanted to protest, but no sooner had she uttered the words, Red Lotus Pavilion, just that half of a sentence, then Moran saw red. What are you trying to say? There's no one at Red Lotus Pavilion but Chuaning, and he's asleep. What exactly are you trying to suggest? The sight of his terrible rage made Song Chitong's heart lurch. At this rate, she was unsure what he might do in his lunacy. Thus, she threw caution to the wind and gambled it all, raised her voice to say, Your Majesty, the man lying in the Red Lotus Pavilion is already dead, yet you wallow there every day. How can this one not worry? She chose her words carefully to evade blame, framing her own selfish desire as concern for Moran. Ooh, the book is calling her out. But I don't think it's going to be enough camouflaging, shall we say. Moran stared at her, and his breathing gradually evened, as if her words had gone through to him on some level. He calmed his rage, then took a moment to steady himself. I've made you worry, he said. Song Chitong heaved a sigh of relief. This one wishes only for your Majesty's well-being, and would gladly die for it. Your Majesty is deeply compassionate, but you must not be so despondent. Then tell me, how do you think this venerable one should be? Forgive this one for saying so. This one only means well for your Majesty, but it's time to bury Chu Zongshi. He's already gone, and keeping his empty body around like this will only cause your Majesty more pain. And? You have more to say, do you not? Might as well get it all off your chest. If she doesn't have, like, warning lights going off inside her head, then she has not a speck of survival instinct left, in my opinion. When she saw his expression relax, Song Chitong's heart, which had leapt up into her throat, settled back in its place in her chest. She lowered her lashes and tilted her head slightly. She knew she looked most like Shimingjing this way. Oh, wow. She really knows how to capitalize on his weaknesses. That's kind of creepy. Song Chitong was perfectly aware that Shimingjing was Mo Weiyu's weakness. What she couldn't understand was why, no matter how she dressed like him or carefully imitated his demeanor, she still couldn't arouse Moran's interest. Although this temperamental man enjoyed her company, he only ever touched her when he was very low or very drunk. Song Chitong suspected that perhaps Moran wasn't really into women. Whatever the reason, it definitely wasn't because he wasn't into Shimingjing. All of Session Peak knew that the man who had died many years ago was Emperor Tashin Jun's true love. I didn't know everyone knew. Well, that's awkward. But also, I can't, like, every single time we see Moran talk about, think about Shimei, it has a quality to it that doesn't feel sexual. Now, I'm not going to speak to whether or not it's romantic love, but it feels more like hero worship in a sense. I don't know. To that, what the hell was Chuaning? Song Chitong believed he was nothing more than a plaything on which Tashi and Jun vented his lust, a plaything he'd already grown tired of at that. Channing may have traded his life for more years' disquietude and remembrance, but she was certain it was at most momentary guilt, a temporary disruption to routine. She was confident in her face, this face that looked so much like Shimin Jing's. That person in Red Lotus Pavilion, neither living nor dead, could never outmatch her on this basis alone. Want to bet? But Moran couldn't be allowed to persist in this insanity. The world these days was in chaos, wars springing up left and right, and she was terrified that she might have hitched her horse to the wrong wagon. She wasn't young anymore. If Moran were to lose his standing, she was unlikely to find another sky-reaching tree she could climb to the top. So she sincerely, wholeheartedly hoped that Moran would push himself together and cease his madness. She mulled it over, weighing the risks against the rewards. In the end, she summoned up the courage to say, "And once Chu Zongshi is gone, there will be none worthy of the Red Lotus Pavilion." Right, go on. This one thinks, with that being the case, the pavilion will only serve to remind your Majesty of the past. So, Moran narrowed his eyes. So perhaps it would be best to seal away the Red Lotus Pavilion after this. A pavilion with only one master makes for a good tale. I don't know why that feels so icky to me. Off about it. Is that just me? I saw someone on Twitter say that they felt absolutely betrayed because no one had warned them about what happened from chapter 97 onwards, and I was warned and I still feel betrayed. Okay, anyway, chapter 101, Shizun, the last flame in this world. Moran said nothing for a long while. Then he smiled brightly. A pavilion with only one master would make a good tale, huh? Well said. His shapely feet trod unhurriedly across the ice-cold stone of the floor, the blue vein across the top flexing as he came to a stop before Song Chitong. Moran lifted one foot and tipped Song Chitong's chin up with his toes, compelling her to meet his gaze. "You've been keeping all this bottled up for quite some time, hmm?" He looked down upon her terror-stricken face with a smile. "Empress Song, you know, there are a number of things I've never asked you about. Since you're pouring your heart out today, why don't we just have it all out, hmm? Come, let's have a nice chat. We can start with the most recent," Moran continued. "The day I set out for Tashir Palace, I clearly remember locking Chuan in the residential palace before leaving. So tell me, how was it that he appeared at Kunlun Mountain? We let him out and allowed him to come find me." "I didn't think about that. That's a good question." Song Chitong's entire body shuddered. "I don't know," she exclaimed. In her panic to explain herself, she forgot to refer to herself as this one, slipping into I instead. Moran smiled. "All right. You don't know that one. Next then." "The year I made you Empress, I also entrusted you with the management of Sishan Peak. Afterward, I had to travel to Yin Mountain to take care of some business. Chuaning had been disobedient at the time, so I had him locked up in the water prison to reflect on his actions." Him just listing all the bad things he's done to Chuaning is rubbing me the wrong way, but okay. Song Chitong's face grew pale at his mention of this matter, and her lips began to quiver. You used the excuse of a prison inspection and went to visit him, but he thoroughly scorned you. Yes, Song Chitong said in a rush. But Your Majesty, I told you about this incident back when it happened. Shizun dismissed me in such a disparaging manner, and then proceeded to insult not only myself but Your Majesty as well. I couldn't contain my anger at that time. This venerable one knows. Moran's smile was faint. You couldn't contain your anger at the time, but Chuaneng had committed grave crimes, and his punishment couldn't be increased without this venerable one's permission. So you carried out a piece of minor discipline and had all 10 of his nails pulled out. And stinging thorns inserted into the tips of each finger. I was not prepared for that. Okay. Song Chitong's eyes filled with horror as she scrambled to say, Your Majesty, when you returned, you praised me for doing well. Moran continued to smile. Oh? Did I? You said that foul-mouthed people should be treated just so, and you even told this one that the punishment was rather light, that if he should speak rudely again in the future, to break his fingers. Her voice trailed off until, in the end, faced with a terrifying smile on Moran's face, she collapsed to the ground in tears. Aran. Moran sighed softly. He smiled. Tom, it was so long ago. This venerable one no longer remembers that he said or didn't say what he said or didn't say back then. Song Chitong held her tongue. She had by now guessed Moran's intent, but her body still shuddered violently at his words. This venerable one's been having dreams lately. Dreams about that day, returning from Yin Mountain and arriving at the water prison to find him with both hands festered and covered in blood. Lovely. Yeah, I didn't think Moran could meet his match in anyone other than the mysterious, master that we've now found out resembles the orange tree guy. But she's offering some good competition here already. Moran spoke slowly, but his voice tightened toward the end, and cold light flashed in his eyes. This venerable one was not happy. Your Majesty, Your Majesty, Song Chitong repeated helplessly. No, Aran, let me explain. Please calm down and let me explain. This venerable one was not happy. Moran continued as if he hadn't heard a word, lowering his expressionless face to look coolly at the woman huddled on the floor. Indulge me a bit, why don't you? Song Chitong had spent these years at Moran's side with her life on the line, like sleeping beside a ferocious tiger. Nevertheless, when she saw Moran's countenance like frost and snow, paired with such an imperious request, Song Chitong broke out into gooseflesh, and her scalp went numb. She could smell the scent of the oncoming storm. She lifted her deep brown eyes and peered meekly up at him as she crawled forward on all fours to nestle herself by his ankles. Of course, anything Aran says. What can I do to make Aran happy? I'll definitely. Moran leaned over and gripped her jaw, wrenching her face upwards. He wore a lovely, innocent smile, just like the one he'd worn when he first laid eyes on her at Rufung Sect. Then, twin pools of sweet dimples had adorned his cheeks as he tugged at her sleeve and said, Xiao Shimei, what's your name? Don't be afraid, I won't hurt you. Talk to me, okay? She shuddered. After so many years, yet with practically the same expression and the same tone, he said something else altogether. Chitong, this venerable one knows you mean it, that you'll do anything to make this venerable one happy. His words were sweet and gentle, and his fingertip caressed her soft lips, the part of her that looked most like Shimingjing's. Moran's lashes trembled lightly as he stared calmly at those petal-like lips. Finally he said, "Then you may go wait for this venerable one, on the road to hell." And she's gonna die. Hi! Sleep well. Thank you for dropping by. Yeah, this is not gonna go well. Song Chitong froze. Okay? He asked gently. The tears that spilled from Song Chitong's eyes were not from sadness, but from fear. She'd known the instant Moran brought up her past abuse of Chuaning that this was going to end badly for her. But she thought the worst that could happen would be punishment by the rod, or the loss of her title. She did not have the courage to even imagine that Moran would that he could actually bear to. Madman. He'd gone mad. He'd gone mad. Moran threw his head back and laughed in a low voice. His laughter grew increasingly arrogant, increasingly unrestrained. He laughed as he kicked open the door of the residential palace, laughed as he strode outside. He had always trod with abandon, had trampled countless lives. Now it was her turn. He'd gone mad. He'd gone mad. Mori, you had really gone mad. Song Chitong sank to her knees on that ice-cold floor of stone and golden brick. The ardor of intimacy within the residential palace had yet to dissipate, but the fires of hell had begun to burn. With her mouth hanging slack and her head tipping backwards, she struggled to look at the sky outside the palace. Dawn was breaking, and the sky was the color of blood. Her bloodshot eyes were dyed crimson. In the distance, she heard Moran call, so casual he might have been ordering his dinner for the day. "Guards, take the Empress away." "Your Majesty," came the panicked reactions of the retinue outside. "Your Majesty, this—" "Toss her in the cauldron. Fry her alive." That's a bit intense. I mean, yeah, that's a bit intense. I'm not gonna say anything else, but damn. Song Chitong suddenly couldn't hear anything more, like she had sunk deep into the sea. She couldn't hear anything more. Fry her alive. Fry her alive. It'll be a lively good time that way. Ha! Ha! He walked further and further away. The sound of his laughter and shouting lingered over Shizun Peak like a high-flying eagle wheeling across the sky. The rising sun painted a long shadow behind him, a lonely figure on the ground. Ever so slowly, he walked. At first, the silhouettes of two youths seemed to walk beside him, and a tall man in white robes. I was doing so well up until this point, and now I think I'm gonna cry again. Then the two silhouettes disappeared, leaving only the man in white robes to accompany him. He walked on, and the white-robed man too vanished into the golden dawn. The rising sun was pure and unblemished, and it claimed those who were likewise pure and unblemished, leaving only him, alone in hell, drowning in an ocean of blood, sinking into the masses of ghosts and fiends. Only him, all alone, growing lonelier and colder the further he walked. He walked until he felt like he was dead, that he had already died, becoming more deeply deranged with every step. Moran remembered in the year before he took his own life that when he looked into the copper mirror, he sometimes couldn't even recognize the monster staring back at him. The night before he died, when he sat... Okay, hold on, what? So it seems we're back in the present day? In the present lifetime, should I rather say? That was an abrupt shift. I was a little bit caught off guard. The fried empress from the beginning of the book. Oh my goodness, Moran is crazy. Yes, he indeed is. I remember she'd passed away, but I couldn't remember how. So this was a surprise all over again. He remembered the night before he died when he sat in the bamboo pavilion at the Red Lotus Pavilion with only an old servant to keep him company. Liu Gong, he had asked lazily. What kind of person did this venerable one used to be? He carried on without waiting for an answer, staring at his own reflection in the pond. This venerable one didn't used to wear his hair like this when he was young, much less this tasseled crown, right? Liu Gong sighed. It is as your majesty says. The crown and hairstyle were both the recommendations of Empress Song after your ascension to the throne. Oh, you mean Song Chutong? Moran sneered and tipped his head back to take a gulp of pear blossom white wine. I actually listened to her suggestions back then, huh? Maybe it was because the end was nigh, and there was no more need to worry about accidentally prickling the Empress's sore spot with a stray word and losing his head. Okay, so we didn't go back to the past, but for a moment, because of the way it was worded, I thought we had. Sorry, we didn't go back to the present. Oh, I'm getting confused now. Maybe it was because the end was nigh and there was no need to worry about accidentally prickling the Emperor's sore spot with a stray word and losing his head. Whatever the reason, the drooping old man spoke the candid truth. Yes, Liu Gong said. His eyes were downcast and his hands tucked into his sleeves. When your majesty first ascended the throne, Empress Song was quite favoured. There was a period of time when your majesty did aught the empress asked. Did your majesty forget? Forget? Moran chuckled. I didn't forget. How could I possibly forget? You kind of sound like you forgot. After he'd married Song Chitong, someone had whispered to her that the reason he favoured her was solely due to her likeness to the deceased Shiming Jin. She was a clever person. She spared no effort in inquiring after Shiming Jin's mannerisms and bearing, then subtly exhibited the same in their everyday life as husband and wife, so that it seemed almost like the dead had come back to life. How could he possibly forget? Okay, interesting. Moran smiled mirthlessly, then suddenly plucked the crown from atop his head and tossed it into the pond without bothering to look where it landed. A startled koi-fish leapt from the water, and the visage reflected therein became warped and distorted. He loosened his top knot and let his inky hair fall. He leaned by the pond side, letting the mercurial light of the rippling, sparkling waters dance across his face. There we go. The crown's gone, and the hair's down. Old Leo, help me think. What more does this venerable one need to do to look as he did before the enthronement? The hair tie, right? Moran examined his reflection. The blue hair tie commonly worn by disciples of Shizun Peak. Are there any left in the palace? There are. When you shed your disciple uniform to ascend the throne, Your Majesty changed this old one, with its charged this old one with its safekeeping. I will go fetch it if that is your majesty's wish. Why does this feel so heavy? Like I have a lump in my throat. Excellent. Go on then. Bring the whole set. The hair tie too. Liu Gong left and returned bearing a stack of old clothes. Moran sat up. As the tips of his fingers brushed the familiar texture of cotton and hemp, snatches of the past fluttered up like dried leaves to land on his tattered heart. Now eager, he took up an outer robe and put it on. But the clothes of his youth were far too small. It wouldn't fit no matter how he tugged or pulled. He flew into a rage. Why doesn't it fit? Why can't I go back? He paced like a trapped beast in a cage, insanity in every line of his face and his eyes flickering with dangerous light. This is this venerable one's clothing, isn't it? Did you fetch the wrong set? If it is this venerable one's clothing, why wouldn't it not fit? Why would it not fit? The old servant was by now accustomed to seeing his master in the grips of madness. Liu Gong used to think Moran's moods terrifying, but today, for some reason, he found the man before him pitiful instead. He wasn't looking for clothes. He was looking for himself, the Moran of past who could never return. Yeah, we got that. You didn't have to spell that out just to hurt us even more. Your Majesty, the old man sighed softly. Let it go. You're not that young man of years gone anymore. At these words, Moran ceased his raging and fell silent. His head whipped around fiercely to glare at the old man's withered face, but he was unable to get a single word out, as if he were choking, and in the end only breathed harshly as he stared with red-rimmed eyes. It was several minutes before he finally managed. I'm not. You're not. A long pause. I can't go back. You can't go back. For the first time, a childlike helplessness appeared on the face of that 32-year-old man. He closed his eyes, the jut of his throat bobbing. The old servant stood to the side with his head bowed, thinking. Once he opens his eyes, he'll surely bare his fangs and shred everything in his path with a snarl. But when Moran opened his eyes again, they were wet with tears. Perhaps it was this that extinguished the inferno in his heart. Moran opened his mouth and, in a voice hoarse and weary, murmured, I see. I can't go back. I can't go back. Okay, before we move on, there's some amazing art here, some very tragic but amazing art. So, in case anyone wants to see, let me just show you guys because it is honestly stunning. But yeah, not good for the heart. Okay. Let me just quickly grab a little bit more tea. He set down the robe as if exhausted, took a seat by the stone table and buried his face in his hands. A long moment passed before he said, Then, I'll just tie up my hair. Your Majesty, why do all this? The venerable one's life will soon end. Don't want to be too lonely when the time comes. His face remained in his hands as he spoke, his expression indiscernible. I just want to change my clothes and feel like I still have old friends around for company. Liu Gong sighed. That's just make-believe. Make-believe is fine, Moran replied. Make-believe is better than nothing. He pulled his long hair back, wrapping the tie around it once, twice. Then he picked up a hair clasp with faded edges from the pile of old clothes, intending to pin his hair just as he had when he was young. But as he looked at his reflection in the water, his hand stilled. Which side did the pin go in from again? Was it the left or the right? This is really well done to show how much he genuinely just discarded his old self. Just makes it sadder, yeah, agreed. He hadn't used this hair clasp for many years. He could no longer remember. Moran closed his eyes and asked, Old Leo, do you know how you swear my hair? To answer, your majesty, this old one only came into the palace 2 years after your enthronement. This old one cannot answer you, but I cannot remember. Moran insisted. I need someone to tell me. Gong remained silent. Where can I find someone who knows? Moran murmured. Who can tell me what I used to look like? Shimung. Old Liu heaved a lengthy sigh but couldn't think of a single name. Truthfully, Moran also knew in his heart that the old man had no answer to give him, and so he held that black hair clasp uncertainly to his left, then his right, before settling on the left side and pinning it there. That seems right, Moran said. Let me go ask him. He strode towards the inner recesses of the pavilion and came to the side of the red lotus pond. Where Chuaning's body lay. Oh my word. Sorry guys. The struggle is real. Looking for all the world as if he were merely asleep. Moran settled himself down on the ground, then propped his cheek on one hand and said, Shizun. The breeze carried with it the faint fragrance of lotus blossoms. As he looked at that man lying with his eyes closed within the vibrant, intoxicating red of the pond, Moran now found he had quite a lot he wanted to say, but at the same time he didn't know what to say at all. When it came to Chuaning, Moran seemed to always be full of emotions, but those emotions were just too jumbled, contained too many flavors. Amidst the sweet and the sour and the bitter and the spicy, he couldn't tell if the greater part of what he felt towards this man was hatred or something else. He really honestly didn't know how to behave towards this person. He had once convinced himself that the sole reason he kept Chuaning around was to vent his hatred and sate his desires. But then Chuaning had died, and Moran still kept this corpse that he could no longer even lie with. The grave had been dug, but Moran couldn't bear to bury him, which is something he didn't even do for Shimingjing. I mean, to be fair, with Shimei, he wasn't yet at a point where he could do anything like this, so I do wonder if he were given the opportunity to do this with Shimei's body, if he would have, but something tells me he wouldn't have. What use was there in keeping this cold, unmoving corpse that couldn't speak, even if he didn't really know? The two of them had been through too much, and whatever tiny, pure thing had been there at the start had been drowned to death long ago. Just kill me even more, why don't you? When Chuaning was still alive, the two rarely passed any When Chuaning was still alive, the two rarely passed any peaceful, amicable days together. But now that Chuaning was gone, A kind of cruel gentleness grew between the living and the dead. Moran visited him often, a jar of peach blossom white wine in hand, and looked without saying much at all. Now he was besieged on all sides and knew that his life was at an end. Dead as he was, Chuaning was the only person from his past, the last one left in the Shizun peak that looked the same but held none of the same people. The only one who had stayed beside him all this time. Moran suddenly wanted to have a nice long heart-to-heart with the cold corpse. Chuaning was dead. He could not protest nor berate him. No matter what Moran said, Shizun would have no choice but to lie there and listen. Yet when Moran tried to move his lips, his throat felt tight. In the end, he could only manage to say one thing. Shizun, pay attention to me. Ish. I'm struggling. Okay, we are on chapter 102, Shizun. Interesting title. Shizun, pay attention to me. They were the words Moran had spoken when they'd first met beneath the heaven-piercing tower. At the time, Chuaning's eyes had been closed. When Moran called to him, his lashes fluttered open. These were also the words Moran said when they parted for the last time at the Red Lotus Pavilion. At that time, Chuaning's eyes had also been closed. Moran called him, but he never again raised his head. This one sentence drifted from half a lifetime, from the heaven-piercing tower to the end of the lotus pond, and finally settled into dust. All those years of hatred and love scattered and went cold. Moran had finally finished his last jar of pearl blossom wine and descended from the southern tip of Shizun Peak towards the eve of his final day. The next morning, the rebel army that charged into Wushan Palace discovered that Taishinjun, that calamity upon the world for the past 10 years, had taken his own life at the age of 32. 2 lifetimes had passed. Yeesh, okay. Opened his eyes. He had slept the night through under the flowering tree before the heaven-piercing tower, and he woke up dazed and lost, unable to tell when he was. Shizun, he murmured absently, pay attention to me. Only then did he remember that, in this lifetime as well, Chuaning was gone. In his past life, Moran had become accustomed to his every day being a bitter struggle. Then, Chuaning had been the one who had walked with him to the very end. He didn't want to be that vile person again in this life, but now Chuaning wouldn't be around to see what became of him. Perhaps the heavens themselves couldn't bear it, or perhaps it was simply fate. Chuaning had grown disgusted beyond endurance with him in the past life, so in this one, he was the first to take his leave. Moran laid his arm across his eyes, holding back the tightness in his throat. I'm struggling to hold back the tightness in my throat. Can the book just give me a break? He heard Xu Zhengyong shouting frantically in the distance. His uncle was looking for him, calling, Bernard, where are you? Bernard! Shimei was calling for him as well. Aran, where are you? Hurry and come out. Bernard, come back and keep Yu-Hung company. Don't do anything stupid. Bernard! Keep Yu-Hung company? Keep him company. Moran dragged himself up off the ground and staggered towards the voices. He couldn't collapse. There was so much he still had to do. They still hadn't found the person behind all this, not to mention the heavenly rift could open again at any time. Shizun Peak had suffered heavy losses in the catastrophe, and there were innumerable matters that needed to be seen to. Shimeng was broken-hearted from grief, so anguished he couldn't even rise. Moran couldn't collapse too. So Moran endured it, and forced himself to pick up the pieces. He told himself, It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. This wasn't the first time he'd lived through Chuaning's death. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. But how could it not hurt? The 3,000 steps Chuaning had crawled, carrying him on his back, how could it not hurt? He'd drained his very last reserves of spiritual energy. He'd given it all to Moran. How could it not hurt? He had suffered an identical injury, but so as not to burden his disciple, he had adopted a heartless expression and left on his own. How could it not hurt? And in this past life, Chuaning had also suffered the same injury as Shimei. It was just that he hadn't said anything about it. He hadn't said, and Moran hadn't asked. He'd roared angrily at Chuaning, vented endless hatred on him, flung to the ground those wontons Chuaning, who had yet to recover from his own injuries, had worked so hard to make for him. Before his eyes, Chuaning had bent down, lowered his head, and then, one by one, had picked up each wonton and thrown them away. How could it not hurt? How could it not have hurt? He had dug out Chuaning's heart. How could it not have hurt? How could it? Moran couldn't take a step further. He stood in place for a long spell, trying to suppress these feelings, trying to rescue his calm. His entire body trembled. It hurt. He buried his face in his hands, bit down on his lip, and swallowed his sobs with the blood. A very long time passed before he managed, just barely, to pull himself together. He lifted his head, his eyes red around the rims, and drew in a deep breath. Then slowly, he walked down the steps. Oh my word, sorry. He couldn't collapse. Uncle? Renar, where are you? You had me worried half to death. How am I going to face Yuheng in the afterlife if something happens to you? It was my fault, Moran said. I'm okay now. Sorry to have made Uncle worry. Shizun Yong shook his head. He wasn't quite sure what to say, so he only patted Moran's shoulder. After a long moment, he said, It's not your fault. It's not your fault. You're already so much stronger than Mengar. Don't say that. Everyone handles grief differently. It's not his fault. Okay, I think I'm gonna do just this one page and then I'm gonna need just a little bit of a break. I know we're early, but I really do need it. Where's Shumeng? Moran asked hoarsely. Sick. He has a high fever. He just drank his medicine and went to sleep. He is inconsolable when awake, crying all day. Sleep will do him some good. Xu Yong looked exhausted. The heavenly rift of the infinite hells has the whole cultivation world in a state. Even the upper cultivation world is sending people to look into the matter now, but whoever is behind it covered his tracks incredibly well. Butterfly Town was practically leveled in the bloody battle, and no clues were left to be found. Moran wasn't at all surprised to hear this. This individual's abilities were clearly beyond what anyone, including himself, had anticipated. Someone who could take Chuaning's life obviously wouldn't be so careless as to leave traces. What does the upper cultivation realm plan to do? Representatives from each sector are holding a meeting at Spiritual Mountain to discuss the matter, Shizun Yong replied. I plan to set off for it tomorrow, but I'm worried about leaving when Mengar is like this. Oh, goodness. Like, my one question is, oops, sorry about that, is how the hell does Chuaning return? I'm so confused. Anyway, I'll see you guys again in 10 minutes at 5 past. Oh, sorry, I forgot to turn on the mic. But it should be good again now. Please just let me know if the audio is okay. Oh, okay, so we are here for another hour. See if I can survive this. One thing I do like, even though it sucks in terms of like my emotionality, one thing I do appreciate is the fact that um, this is really allowing us to sit in our feelings a little bit. There's no immediate fix for Chuaning being dead. You really get the sense of absolute despair. Um, so yeah, I mean, it sucks, but it's really well done. Okay, is the audio okay? If not, please let me know as quickly as possible. But otherwise, I think we can just get back to it. Yay! Thank you. Okay. So we are at the top of page 136. No, sorry, 165 for anyone who wants to read with their books as well. And I think we can just get going immediately. He was right there. Even the world's preeminent Zongshi Chuaning had lost his life in the incidents at Butterfly Town. Negligence at the upper court world might negligent as the upper cultivation world might be, they could no longer afford to simply sit by and watch. Who laid down the spells that opened the barrier? What is he after? What's his next move? These questions circled in their hearts like vultures. Everyone wanted answers, but an extensive investigation had yielded none. They had no choice but to cooperate with one another. Don't worry, Uncle, Moran said. I'll help Auntie take care of things in the sect while you're gone. That's good, that's good, Shu Zhengyong said. I wish I didn't have to burden you with this. With Shu Zhengyong's departure and Shu Meng lost in his fatigue, all the accumulated scrolls of paperwork and attendant tasks fell to Moran. He threw himself wholeheartedly into the work without daring to rest for a moment. If he stopped to rest, stopped to think, the anguish and regret would drag him into the abyss and torture his broken soul. He wished he could bury his head in his scrolls day in and day out, if only so he could ignore the endless torments and guilt that racked his heart. When the infinite hells had opened, yin energy had flooded the mortal realm, and all manner of fiends, long suppressed, had seized the opportunity to escape and wreak havoc across the land. The letters of commission requests aid from Sishan Peak had practically piled up into a small mountain. Moran busied himself taking care of it all, forgetting to sleep and skipping meals. He often stepped into Loyalty Hall at the break of dawn and stayed late into the night before returning to his quarters to rest. But even buried in this ocean of paperwork, he would find himself pricked unawares by splinters of Chuaning left behind. That's a beautiful description, if extremely tragic. Two things. One, shouldn't you be maybe like practicing your cultivation so you can protect Shimingjing from this imminent threat that everyone is talking about? And two, I can't help but wonder, with regards to this mysterious guy that we have, if maybe he was a threat in Moran's first life, but because Moran was the bigger threat, he accidentally eliminated that original threat, and now that original threat is like coming back for revenge, attempting to succeed where he failed in the first lifetime. And that's why he's basically competing with Moran for becoming the most villainous. It's a ridiculous theory, but I have a pile of those already, so I might as well add to it. Okay. Xinjiang region had been troubled as of late, and most of the 82 families in Fengling village are old and ailing, with no means to defend themselves. We are fortunate to have a holy knight guardian or automaton made by your esteemed sect elder to fend off the fiends for now. But this is not a long-term solution, so we would like to request— oh no. Splinters indeed. A drop of wax slid slowly down the candle, and the wick crackled. Moran came to with a start. He had been staring vacantly at the letter for some time, his fingers tracing the words Holy Night Guardian over and over. In his mind's eye, he saw Chuaning in the Red Lotus Pavilion, his hair pulled back in a ponytail, and a sanding fowl held in his mouth as he poured his focus into oiling an automaton. Moran let out a long breath. He pressed his fingers to his forehead and rubbed lightly. Suddenly he heard someone knocking. Chimay? The beautiful young man, dressed in light, simple white robes, entered balancing a tray. He set it down beside Moran's scrolls, then rolled up his sleeves and stirred the candlelight back to brightness. Aram, he said gently, you've been working all day. Have something to eat. All right. Moran forced a smile and lay down the scroll, continuing to knead at the throbbing pain between his brows. I made a bowl of ginseng chicken soup and a few side dishes. Chimay set out their plates and felt the temperature through the side of the bowl. Oh good, it's still warm. As they ate, Chimay noticed a loose wisp of hair hanging before the handsome, weary face and reached out to tuck it back in. Aram. That day. Was there something you wanted to tell me? Moran's thoughts were scattered, and it took him a moment to understand what Chimay was asking. He glanced at Chimay. Which day? You know which day, don't even pretend. Chimay pressed his lips and lowered his gaze. He was silent for a time, then answered, the day of the heavenly rift. Moran waited for him to continue. You said you were going to go help Shizun mend the heavenly rifts, and that there was something, that if you still felt like telling me when you came back, then— Chimay bowed his head, and his voice trailed off. In the glow of the candle, his delicate snow-white ears seemed a little pink. I feel so bad for Chimay being caught in the middle of a ship because he seems so nice, and I mean, there's always the possibility that he is the devil in disguise, and we don't know it, but right now he seems nice and I feel bad for him. Moran stared for a long time, but couldn't manage a single word. He knew, without a doubt, that he loved Chimay dearly, but right now, in this moment, he really wasn't in the mood, not in the least. Moran was shameless and unmannerly. He couldn't care less what others said, and things like morality and etiquette were thoroughly foreign to him. But that didn't mean he was heartless. A long second passed in silence. When Moran finally spoke, his voice was soft. Sorry, I feel really down right now, and I don't think this is the right time. So about that thing, I'll tell you some other time, okay? Chimay's head snapped up, his beautiful eyes startled. Moran squeezed out a chuckle and raised his hand. He hesitated a second, then patted Chimay's head. I'm kind of dumb, and there have been so many things to take care of lately. I don't know when I'll have. I don't know when I'll have a quiet moment to gather my thoughts. I don't want to be careless about it. Even the warmth of the candle couldn't conceal the gradual blanching of Chimay's face. Careless? He paused, then smiled. Aram, it was life or death back then. I would have thought anything you were going to say at the time like that was something you'd already given careful thought to. So Shmei knows. I have, Moran furrowed his brows. I've thought about it for a long time and it's never changed, but... Shmei leaned forward. Moran hesitated. Eventually he said, not right now. His hands clenched into fists in his sleeves. Not right now, Shmei. You don't know yet, but it's something very important. I don't want to rush it and tell you at such a miserable time. I don't know if I trust Shmei's reaction. Which is sad, because I want to be able to trust Shmei. Young master, a genius suddenly barged in unannounced. Of course he did. When he saw that the one managing sect matters in Loyalty Hall was Moran, he hurriedly dipped his head in a bow and corrected himself. Ah, Morgongze. At this interruption, the faint blush on Shmei's cheeks faded. He flicked his sleeves and sat back in his chair, taking on a mild, unassuming appearance. Interesting wording. Taking on, not resuming or anything to suggest that the mild, unassuming appearance is legitimate, shall we say? Moran looked up, oblivious to the shift in Shmei's demeanor. What is it? Reporting in, there's an esteemed guest at the sect entrance. Oh, okay, is this Shizun? An esteemed guest? Moran echoed. Anyone of note from the 10 great sects is at Spiritual Mountain right now. Where did this esteemed guest come from? The disciple seemed both fearful and excited. His face flushed as he stammered incoherently for a few seconds before he finally managed to blurt, It's Master Huai of Wubei Temple. What? Even the ex-emperor Taishin Jun couldn't help but jump to his feet. Shmei was startled as well. Master Huai? Moran had good reason to be shocked. Master Huai was practically a legend in the cultivation world. This man had long ago achieved enlightenment. By all rights, he ought to have ascended. But when the great gates of the heavenly realm had opened before him, he had pressed his palms together and said that he could not break with the mortal realm, could not let go of his lifelong obsession, and could not wash himself of past sins. In the end, the heavenly light dimmed, the lotus blossoms wilted, and Master Huai had ambled away from immortality like his threadbare monk's robes. From immortality in his threadbare monk's robes, his staff tapping lightly against the ground. I really like him. Yeah, he does seem very unhappy with Moran's answer, that is for sure. After declining his chance to ascend and become an immortal, he had gone into seclusion at Wubei Temple to reflect. A century passed in the blink of an eye. 100 years since, the cultivation world had heard his name but never laid eyes on his person. The number of seniors still living who had met him before his seclusion could be counted on one hand. Are we about to find out that Moran is much older than he himself knew? In his past life, Moran had turned the land upside down and still hadn't been able to meet this Master Huai. Huai had been too ancient and had passed away on a rainy spring day the year before Moran climbed to the top of the human world. No one knew how old he'd been when he passed. Yet, how unexpected! In this reborn life, Master Huai had come calling in the dead of night of his own accord. Yeah, this frickin' lifetime is full of surprises, it seems. Innumerable thoughts flashed through Moran's mind in the space of an instant. Though he didn't yet know his business here, Moran immediately recalled certain rumors about Master Huai. Huai. How could he have forgotten about Master Huai? When Shimei died in the last lifetime, Moran had been ignorant. He'd no idea there was such a sage in the cultivation world. It was only later, when he was emperor, that he learned from his subordinates of the existence of one in this world who could wield rebirth, one of the 3 forbidden techniques. This person was Huai. Interesting. Very interesting. He had dispatched people to Ubei Temple at all speed to request the sage's presence, that he might recall Shimei's soul. But the people he sent returned with the news that the great master had already passed away, and with him Moran's last chance to revive Shimei. But right now, this person of legend was still alive. He was still alive. How did he forget that? How could he forget? Moran's heart lurched and he trembled all over. A blaze lit in his eyes as he said hastily, "Hurry, invite the great master in." What's bad is I think that Chuaning was already reborn. That's the scar that's on his chest. That he did have something to do with the vision that they saw way back when, in the Bird Town. I can't remember what it was called. That he was that person. He was reborn via this master, and thus he won't be able to be reborn again because he can't grant rebirth to the same person twice. That's a lot of speculation, but that's where my brain's going. The disciple could respond. Moran changed his mind. Actually, I'll go welcome him myself. But he'd taken only 2 steps when there was a sudden flash of yellow from without the hall. Neither the candle nor its flame shuddered. There was no hint of a breeze. No one, not even Moran, with his keen eyes, had seen him enter. Yet a monk arrayed in a bamboo hat and threadbare monk's robes now stood commandingly inside Loyalty Hall. He had moved like lightning and stopped right in front of Moran, who started at the sudden proximity. This one's already imposing so late at night and shall not trouble more Shizun. So, a deep, mellow voice drifted out from beneath the bamboo hat, startling both Moran and Shimei. How was that the voice of a 100-year-old man? Moran had barely finished the thought when the monk removed his bamboo hat. Sorry, my brain immediately went, and it revealed the face of Shulien. Sorry, not me mixing genres here. Well, mixing stories, not genres. In the candlelit hall, he looked no more than 30 years of age, with a pleasant appearance and a mild demeanor. His eyes were bright and sharp, but rather than projecting menace, they were calm and lucid, like the reflection of light in water. "You are?" The monk pressed his palms together and bowed low. I can't say that word, I'm not even going to try. I'm scared I'll butcher it. This humble monk is Huai. No one had expected Master Huai, who was 100 years old at least, to look younger than Xu Zhengyong. For a beat, there was only stunned silence. But Moran knew a thing or two when it came to cultivation. Huai was someone who had rejected ascension and chose instead to remain in the mortal realm. The only difference between this man and an immortal was that final step of shedding his mortal body and undergoing the heavenly trial. After following this line of reasoning to its conclusion, Moran relaxed a little, though he still couldn't look away from Huai. Huai didn't wish to disturb anyone else, so they sat down in Loyalty Hall, just the 3 of them. Moran poured tea from the great master with his own hand. Huai accepted and murmured his thanks, but did not drink. He set the tea aside on the small sandalwood table and slowly raised his head. He spoke in polite and mellow tones, but cut straight to the point. "Mo Jeju, Pray forgive this humble monk for being so forward, but the reason for my visit today is a past acquaintance. How are you gonna feel when you find out he's dead? Moran's hearing began to race. His vision swam, and his fingers dug into the table's edge with such force he nearly cracked it. He stared intently at Master Huai's face as words from his past life whirled through his mind like drifting flakes of snow. There's a rumor that someone has successfully used rebirth, one of the 3 forbidden techniques, but it's rumor only. There's no knowing whether there's any truth to it. Where is this Master Huai? I'll pay any price to bring Shimei back. To answer, your Master Huai has already passed away many years ago. He wrote nothing in all his life, and regarding rebirth, he said only that to change fate is in defiance of heaven's will. It's dangerous, immeasurable. Other than that, he left nothing else. The words steamed past his ears. Master Huai had an unfathomable grasp of immortality and reincarnation. Word has it that he had dealings with the ghost realm. If he yet lived, perhaps Mingjing Shizun might have returned from the grave, but unfortunately, Master Huai was like a ghost lingering in the world of the living. He undoubtedly had a hand in anything and everything to do with the yin and the yang. Moran drew a deep breath and was surprised to find that his voice trembled faintly. Past acquaintance. A past acquaintance? He murmured, his own eyes locked with Master Huai's clear ones. Moran's back was covered in a sheen of sweat. He asked in a voice so soft it was nearly inaudible, "Who is the past acquaintance?" The monk rose slowly. In the low candlelight, no shadow pulled beneath his feet. The sleeves of his plain, thin yellow robes hung low. The robe was obviously worn, but it was completely smooth and free of wrinkles as it drifted lightly in the breeze, like the flickering outline of a ghost. This great master was certainly inscrutable. Moran could practically hear the pounding of his own heart in his ears. He unconsciously stood with Huai, and the 2 of them gazed at one another. Great master. If there had been a mirror before him right now, he would have seen the light of hope that dawned unbidden on his face, and the pleading look that followed in his wake. Who was this past acquaintance? Was it him? Huai lowered his lashes and sighed as he pressed his palms together again. My disciple Chuaning perished 7 days ago. Tonight is the night his soul is due to return. This humble monk cannot bear to send off one so young, and comes to Shizun Peak to beg Mojiju's pity. Please return this monk, his disciple. I don't know what to make of that. I know we'll find out right now, but I don't know what to make of that. I just need to quickly drink some tea and then we shall jump into the next chapter. I feel like these are going by really fast though, now that I've stopped crying, at least. Is everyone still okay? We are on chapter 103, Shizun, I'm coming to find you. That sounds promising, but I don't want to get my hopes up. So it was like that, his disciple. Moran had never imagined that this exalted monk... You're scared? Oh no, grab a pillow, you might need it. Moran had never imagined that this exalted monk, someone practically indifferentiable betwixt human and ghost, was Chuaning's teacher. For a moment he found himself unable to speak. It was Shimei who reacted first, bending his head at once in a formal rite of respect. I was unaware that the great master was thus related to our late master, he said in a deferential tone. This humble one offers Huai Shizhu his sincere greetings. There's no need to call me Shizun, Master Huai replied. Chuaning was expelled from the sect by the humble monk long ago. Ah! Shimei's eyes widened slightly in surprise. I see. He was prudent by nature. Though he was curious, he understood from the faint wistfulness in Master Huai's expression that the monk had no wish to speak of it, and so asked no further. But Moran's thoughts were elsewhere. He pressed urgently, feeling as though his still beating heart was being embroiled in his chest. Great Master, you said you came here for Shizun. So do you have some means of bringing Shizun back? Aran. Do you know how to bring him back? Tell me the truth. Do you know how? The rapid pumping of his heart, coupled with exhaustion from days of overwork, made Moran light-headed. His vision swam, and the rest of the sentence caught in his throat, impossible to speak. But the rims of his eyes grew red. Master Huai sighed. Moujiju, pray take care. But yes, that is indeed why this monk is here. His face, once pale as paper, flushed with color. He stared fixedly at Master Huai, his bloodless lips quivering for a moment before he managed to continue. Do you really? This old monk would not disturb the two Shiju so late at night for a prank. Fair. Moran still wanted to say more. His throat moved, but only choked sobs emerged. A long interval passed in silence. The rebirth technique alters fate in defiance of heaven's will, and it is no simple matter, Master Huai finally said. This old monk owes Chu Zongshi much. If not, I would never have resorted to such measures. Visiting Certain Peak was a decision made after 7 days of consideration. Altering fate is in defiance of heaven's will, Moran said, testing the words. After a second he muttered miserably, altering fate in defiance of heaven's will. If even a sinner like me was given an opportunity to alter my fate in defiance of heaven's will, then surely a good person like him should be given the same chance. Half crazed as he was in that moment, Moran actually let slip of his own alternation of fate in defiance of heaven's will. It was only luck that he had been mumbling indistinctly, and no one caught the insinuation that he himself was reborn. Or so you say. I'm not trusting your word at all. I think there might have been someone who heard. Shiju, said Shimei. Since it alters fate in defiance of heaven's will, and rebirth itself is a forbidden technique, I imagine it must be extremely difficult to perform, and may not necessarily succeed. Right? Correct, Huai confirmed. This technique involves not only the wielder and the deceased, but also requires a third person to locate the totality of the deceased's soul. And this is where Moran comes in, because that's why the title is Shizun, I'm coming to find you. Please let that be the case. I can't imagine it not being the case. The journey to rebirth is rife with hardships, and the slightest mistake could result in eternal damnation and complete shattering of the soul. Shimei fell silent. For that reason, this old monk needs not disturb anyone else, and came only to ask Chu Zhongshi's 3 disciples if he would be willing to tread fire and flood and pass through untold dangers for him. If you are not willing, then even if this old monk opens the gates of rebirth, Chuaning will not be able to return. Moran had guessed most of this even before Huai's explanation. The reason the 3 forbidden techniques were forbidden was that, unlike ordinary magic, they required certain sacrifices and involved certain dangers. In the past lifetime, he had been willing to give his life for Shimei, and this one he had already decided that, in order to repay his debt to Chuaning, he would again not hesitate. Moran wasn't heartless. It was just that, in the last lifetime, he had never been willing to give Chuaning even the tiniest piece of his heart. But now you are? Am I reading correctly? And that's what I'm taking it as. In the glow of the candlelight, Moran looked directly at Master Huai. The great master needn't ask Shimeng, he said. Shizun died because of me. There's no need to involve anyone else in this matter. I, Moran, am willing to shoulder all the dangers of this technique alone. Aran, Shimei muttered, then turned to ask Huai. Shiju's words are sobering indeed. What will the actual trial be like? Although Mo Shiju is willing to undertake the dangers himself, Huai said, for the first step of this technique, the more people there are willing to take the risk, the more likely it is to succeed. I feel bad for saying this, but I don't know if I can trust Shimei with this. So let's wait for Shiju to get here, and then I will explain to all three of you. This old monk already asked someone to call him when I first arrived. He paused, then smiled at Shimei. On a separate note, please remember not to refer to this old monk as Shizhu. As I mentioned earlier, this old monk no longer holds the position of Zhongshi's Shizun. Now that Moran had calmed somewhat, he had to ask, why did the great master expel our Shizun from the sect? Shimei was flabbergasted. I ran. No matter, it's not some unspeakable thing. Huai sighed. In this humble monk's youth, he once received the care of a benefactor. However, my benefactor was ill-fated and lost his life protecting others in a great calamity. It had been hundreds of years hence, but the thought of it still makes this humble monk uneasy. Thus, the most important rule of our sect had always been that its disciples must focus solely on cultivation and, until and unless they reached enlightenment, are forbidden from setting foot in the outside world or meddling in matters thereof, so as to safeguard their own lives. Moran considered it for a moment and said Shizun couldn't do it. I do wonder if this is somehow the son of that great calamity that we witnessed the flashback of, but I'm trying to see connections where there probably aren't any. Indeed, there was a bitter twist to Huai's smile. That little disciple of mine had a temperament much like my benefactor's. He grew up in a temple and though he had little in way of experience, he possessed skill and talent in abundance. By all rights, he ought to have cultivated into ascension without incident. But the year he came of age, he happened to be at the foot of a mountain collecting ores and came upon a group of fleeing refugees. May sighed. Shizun definitely wouldn't have just stood by and watched. Huai nodded. Not only did he not stand by, after he escorted the refugees to safety and made arrangements for them, he left the mountain without permission to see for himself how people lived within the lower cultivation realm. It's nice to kind of see a little bit of a rebellious side to Chuaning because it's obviously there. He wouldn't have been able to do all the things that he's done in his life if he didn't have a quiet rebellious streak, but it's nice to see it kind of played out this way. I thought the same thing. Mind you, I never finished the books. Oh, you didn't finish the books? Well, maybe this time you will. Who knows? I don't know. It feels like it's still gonna be a while because we're only getting volume 5 soon, and there's still 6 more to go, but it's fine. Where was I? Moran and Shimei lapsed into silence. Shizun Peak had been only recently established back then, and the situation in the lower cultivation realm had been far more chaotic than now. What Chu Wanning had seen there went without saying. When he returned, he told me that he wanted to put his cultivation training on hold so he could go down among the people to help the injured and save lives. What is such Chuaning thing? Did you agree? Shimei asked. No. Shimei felt quiet. He was only 15 then, with a pure, simple nature and a hot temper. I mean, nothing much has changed. How could I possibly allow him to go out on his own? Besides, his cultivation was high, but his constitution was poor, and all kinds of dangerous characters lurked in the world. As his master, this humble monk truly could not help but worry. But he didn't listen to you in the end, Moran guessed. No, he didn't. We had a heated argument about it. He said, how can Shizun just sit there all day with his eyes closed, trying to ascend, while the common people suffer before our eyes? Oh, goodness. Shimei exclaimed in surprise. Such words directed at Huai would have been extremely harsh no matter who said them, but for them to come from Chuaning, his own disciple at the time, was shockingly improper. Huai's expression was placid, but a hint of melancholy colored his features. This humble monk's control over his emotions was yet lacking back then, and in a fit of anger this humble monk said to his disciple, you can't even save yourself, how can you save others? And what did Shizun say? Shimei asked. If you don't know how to save others, how can you save yourself? The entire hall fell silent at these words, because they came not from Huai, but in a whisper from Moran. Upon suddenly hearing him speak the same words as Chuaning back then, Master Huai gazed quietly at the young man before him, his eyes glinting in the candlelight. After a long interval, he heaved a sigh. Is that what he's been teaching you? Huai sighed again. He really never changed at all. Even that unwavering conviction in his path. Huai's mind was a mess. Moran's wasn't much better. He had always scoffed at that line of Chuaning's. He had thought it to be a fake righteousness and empty words. But when he said it just now, he instead felt anguish, like his heart was engulfed by flames. Several seconds passed before Huai's hollow voice echoed once again inside Loyalty Hall. It shames me to admit it, but I lost my temper that day. I told him that if he insisted on being stubborn, if he took one step outside the temple gates, then we would be master and disciple no more. Our ties would be severed. He paused as if choking on that piece of the past, as if he wanted to explain in detail, yet also did not. It's a beautiful description. He hesitated, then shook his head. As I'm sure you've guessed, Chuaning ultimately chose to cut ties and leave. It's been many years since that day. He and I sought different things. So though we both walked this mortal world, our paths have never since crossed. That's not Shimei began. That's not the great master's fault. Oh, this sucks. I was 3/4 into it, and then they licensed them, so the fan copy was pulled down. Oh, that makes sense. Okay, but I'm buying the books. Okay, that's good. I found out that they were being licensed, and I wasn't sure about whether or not it was the kind of thing that I would enjoy. And then everyone was just like, no, you need to check this out, and I'm so glad I did, because even though it's rough, the triggers are a lot, and it's very grim, but it's fantastic. So I'm very excited to see where all of this goes, because I have no idea. As all my guesses and random conjectures have probably indicated. Okay, we have 15 minutes left. Let's see how much of this chapter we can do. Right and wrong, Padre replied. Truth and falsehood. These things are not so easily grasped, but Chuaning was once my disciple, and since I heard that he died in that bloody battle, this humble monk has found no peace. Thus, I have come here to do what I can. Try our luck. See if we can bring back Shizun Shi. At that moment, the hall's vermilion and painted doors were flung open. Shimeng stood in the doorway. When he'd arrived, no one knew, but he had clearly overheard the part that mattered. He had only been told that Master Huai was here, not what the old monk came for, so he had taken his time getting here, sipping dejectedly at his bowl of herbal medicine as he walked. Now, after hearing Huai's proposal, the bowl lay shattered in pieces on the floor, and the hot medicine brew had spattered all over him. But the son of the phoenix seemed not to feel the burn at all as he cried, "Bring back! Bring back! Shizun can come back!" He stumbled into the room at a run and unceremoniously grabbed onto Huai. "You bold donkey, what did you just say? Is this some kind of joke? Young master, this is..." Shimei hurried to interject. "No, that was unbecoming of me." Although he didn't know the man before he had been Chuaning's master, Shimeng did at least remember that he was here to save Shizun's life. He swiftly let go. "Great master, as long as you can bring Shizun back, if you ever need anything in the future, I, Shimeng, will go through hell and high water, risk life and limb for you. Just please bring it. Say it's no jest." You know, I never considered it before, and I'm not seriously considering it, but there is a small part of me that's like, is his feelings for Chuaning platonic? Is it just a massive amount of hero worship? I can't tell. Shishishu, Huai said, "There's no need for all that. This humble monk came falling at this late hour specifically for your Shizun." He turned to gaze out the window at the night sky. "It's almost time. Since the three young Shiju are all assembled, please allow this humble monk to impart to you the details and challenges of the rebirth technique." "Please do, Great Master," Shimei said. But Shimeng pressed urgent. "What's there to say? Skip the talk and go save him already." "Shimeng, that's not how we do things. Can you just..." Shiju is understandably anxious," Huai replied, "but you must realize that any mistake could not only cost you your life, it could also irretrievably scatter Chuaning's soul. If such a thing were to happen, your Shizun would no longer be able to enter the cycle of reincarnation. Would you risk this?" Shimeng's face flushed, and his hands clenched tightly around the hems of his sleeves. "Good." Only after several seconds did his grip loosen. "All right, I'll listen to the Great Master's explanation." Huai produced from his storage pouch 3 pure white silk lanterns. The white silk of their exterior was shot through with thin threads of gold, and a complex glyph was embroidered on the center of each lantern in 13 colors of silken thread, circling and interlacing like spiderwebs spun to capture departed souls. Beautiful description, again. These are soul-catching lanterns. Oh, he meant it literally. Okay, cool. Master Huai distributed the 3 lanterns, 1 to each of them. "Take these and attend carefully to what this humble monk will say next." Moran took a lantern gingerly in his hands. Every living person has 3 ethereal souls and 7 corporeal spirits. The 3 ethereal souls are the earth soul, the Cognizance soul, and the human soul. I think I butchered that, sorry. After death, these 3 souls leave the body and each go their own way. All of this you know already, but I would hazard a guess that you don't know where exactly each soul goes. Please enlighten us, Great Master, Shimei said. The Earth soul and the human soul proceed to the underworld, while the person's soul remains within the body. It's said that one soul returns on the seventh day, but in truth it is only the human soul that returns to the world of the living, where it meets with the cognizant soul. The human soul, by and large, returns due to some unfulfilled wish. Once its wish is realized, it will merge with the cognizant soul within the body. The merged soul will then go to the underworld to reunite with the earth soul, and when the three are complete again, they will there await reincarnation. Many who attempt rebirth without full knowledge of these intricacies end up calling back an incomplete portion of the soul, which naturally dissipates in short order. That's terrifying. After Shimei's death in that past life, Moran had indeed tried to call back his soul, but it had been just as Fajia had said. Under the bone-white moonlight, there had appeared only a faint shadow of that person, which had dispersed instantly into the glitter of light. So that's how it is, Moran murmured. Chuaning's cognizant soul yet remains in his body, Fajia continued. That one you needn't worry about. Our success hinges on finding his human soul and his earth soul. How do we find them? Shumeng asked hastily. By using the soul-catching lantern. Fajia answered. This lantern is lit by spiritual energy alone, so you must sustain it with a stem of your own, and carry it through Shizun Peak. If Chuaning does not refuse the three Shiju, when the light of the soul-calling lantern then the light of the soul-calling lantern will illuminate his human soul. Okay, but he might be under the impression that Moran hates him, so this might not be exactly easy. This could be a problem. At these words, Moran's heart sank. Then what if Shizun doesn't want to see us? That's the first challenge, said Fajia, and the reason our chance of success is greater if more people are willing to look for him. I must caution you that if Chuaning has no lingering attachment to this world and has already decided to pass on, then the soul-catching lantern will be unable to illuminate him. As you can see, for the rebirth technique to work, everything, time, place, and people must align perfectly. If the deceased retains no attachment to any of those who search for him and is unwilling to return to the world of the living, then no one can compel him to return. Just, break my heart and throw it away, why don't you? Moran's hands tightened unconsciously around the body of the lantern, and he fell silent. Shumeng, however, did not hesitate. Shizun cared for us more than anyone. How could he refuse to come back? Great Master, after we find Shizun's human soul and with the lanterns, what then? Once you find the human soul, you must travel to a certain place. The underworld, I'm assuming? Where? Shumeng asked. The underworld. Great. All three of them were shocked. They hadn't anticipated actually descending to the underworld in person. Shimei let out a soft ah, then lowered his graceful lashes slightly and asked in a quiet voice, how could a living person go into hell? I have my ways. Shizun need not concern himself with the how. Fajia leveled him with a measured gaze and continued, but of the three of you, no matter who finds Chuaning's human soul first, you must wholeheartedly wish for him to return to the living world and be unreservedly willing to go to the heavens above and the underworld below for his sake. If you lack strength of conviction, then Chuaning's soul will scatter midway and may never be gathered again. That's Shimei startled. But Shimeng spoke first. The depth of the affection and regard I hold for Shizun is beyond measure. Even if I must go to the infinite hells to find him, I'll have no complaints. Shizun died because of me. Moran lifted his eyes. After a short pause, he said he too agreed. I owe him far too much. I also have no complaints. No one checked with Shimei, and I'm concerned about that. Good, said Huai. Then listen well. Once one of you finds Chuaning's human soul, the others will no longer be able to see him. Whoever finds him must be sure to keep the soul-calling lantern lit all the way until daybreak, and to keep his soul within its light. Doesn't sound too difficult, Shimeng observed. Just because it doesn't sound difficult doesn't mean it's gonna be easy. I'm stressed already. It's difficult, Huai said. Once the three souls split, it is common for each to be missing something. It could be hearing, cognition, or memories. Simply put, if you're unlucky, the Shizun you meet may not be willing to listen to you, and you'll have to figure out some way to win him over. Shimeng was struck speechless. Moran felt his heart contract with unease. He asked hesitant, "Win him over? But what if we say something wrong? He was hard enough to predict in life, and now that he's a ghost." Moran's worry was genuine, but the friction between him and Shimeng had festered for so long that Shimeng's first thought was that he meant to disparage Chuaning. He turned furiously to glare at Moran. "What's so hard about convincing Shizun?" he snapped. "Just keep him within the lantern's range." "What happens after daybreak?" Shimei cut in. After daybreak, Chuaning's human soul will drift into the soul-catching lanterns. This humble monk will wait by the bridge with a bamboo raft. Shizun Peak is situated at the entrance to the ghost realm, and the waters beneath READALONG Bridge flow directly into the Yellow Springs. This raft will ferry whoever locates the soul fragment into the ghost realm. "You can go to the ghost realm on a bamboo raft?" Shimeng asked. It is a funny thought. "Only one person can go?" Shimei questioned right behind him. "The others can't help?" "They cannot. Whoever finds Chuaning's human soul must go alone into the ghost realm to seek his earth soul as well. If that person should give up halfway or have second thoughts, then Chuaning's human soul will be devoured by the soul-catching lantern, never to reincarnate." So just like in case we're wondering, the stakes are high. Oh, you thought the stakes were high before, they're even higher now. I'm stressed. Shimeng started. He whipped his head around to Moran and said, "You sit this one out. I don't trust you." Ironic, because I don't trust Shimei. But okay. He whipped his head around to Moran. Oh, okay. Moran kept his silence and weathered his cousin's doubts without protest. Shimei did his best to keep the peace. "Young master," he said, "Aran isn't the type to back out like that, so what if it's not?" Shimeng snapped. "He got Shizun killed once already. Why should I believe he won't do it a second time? He's a Scrooge." "The great master is still here," Shimei reminded him quietly. "How can you say that?" "Why shouldn't I say it? Am I wrong? How many times has Shizun gotten hurt because of him? Any time he's around, there's trouble." The rims of Shimeng's eyes grew red, and his lips quivered as he spoke. He trembled all over, then suddenly lost control, and reached out to wrest the soul-catching lantern from Moran's hands. "Give me the lantern. Don't bring Shizun any more misfortune." Moran had no reply. "Give it to me." Shimeng swore at him. Moran did not argue. For the first time in his life, he felt Shimeng was right. Be it in front of the ghost mistress of ceremonies, or at the bottom of Jincheng Lake, which of Chuaning's injuries couldn't be laid at his feet? How many scars did Channing carry because of him? A Scrooge. He wasn't wrong. But even so, even knowing he had treated his Shizun disgracefully, even knowing he wasn't worthy to beg him to return from the underworld, he still didn't want to let that soul-catching lantern go. He held tightly, stubbornly, to that pale white lantern as Shimeng cursed and tore at him. Even as bloody scratches appeared on the backs of his hands, he remained still, his head lowered. When Shimeng breathed harshly, finally loosening his grip, it was to say with reddened eyes, "More way here. How much longer do you intend to hurt him?" Moran didn't look at him. He stared down at that empty lantern in silence. Just as the silence stretched so long as it seemed he wasn't going to respond at all, he suddenly said quiet, "I want to bring him home." His voice was so quiet, pushed down by the weight of shame and guilt, so quiet that Shimeng at first didn't quite catch it, and stood blinking for a beat before he realized what Moran had said. He sneered. "Ha! You want to bring him home?" Moran closed his eyes without a word. Shimeng spat at him, every syllable torn to shreds between his teeth. "Have you no shame?" Okay, this is not gonna help Shizun, and you guys are wasting time, so can you please not? Okay, we are at the top of page 189, and it is now 11 p.m. my time. So I'm gonna end it here just to be safe. But I think we made somewhat decent headway. We didn't do 50 pages as I would have liked, but still, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm very happy that the majority of this one didn't have me crying and like just being a mess. But yeah, there was still a lot of like sad moments, and I'm really excited to see this quote unquote adventure that they're gonna go on. Obviously, there's a lot that can go wrong, and it's not like everything has been smooth sailing up until this point. So I don't even feel like I can be assured in Chuaning's full return. Like I can't help but wonder if something is gonna happen that means that a part of his soul gets left behind, but then we've kind of been assured that it's either all of him or none of him that returns, so maybe that shouldn't be something I'm worrying about, but it still is. I do fear with regards to Shimei, because Shimei's kind of made it clear that he seems very unsure. He didn't utter a confirmation. He was interrupted before he could. But the question would just be like, if this doesn't succeed, where would that leave us? So because of that, I do think it's gonna succeed. There might still be issues that crop up because of it, but I think hopefully, potentially, Chuaning is gonna return, and that's like 99% assured. I'm not sure. We shall see. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought, and otherwise I'll see you guys again on Tuesday for our next read along. 再见。